Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. He was mortal once, as were we all. However, his contempt for humanity drove him to create me and my brethren. I am Raziel, firstborn of his lieutenants. I stood with Kain and my brethren at the dawn of the Empire. I have served him a millennium. Over time, we became less human and more divine. Kain would enter the state of change and emerge with a new gift. Some years after the Master, our evolution would follow, until I had the honor of surpassing my lord. For my transgression, I earned a new kind of reward. Agony. There was only one possible outcome. My eternal damnation. I, Raziel, was to suffer the fate of traitors and weaklings, to burn forever in the bowels of the lake of the dead.
Cast him in.
Tumbling, burning with white-hot fire, I plunged into the depths of the abyss. Unspeakable pain, relentless agony. Time ceased to exist. Only this torture and a deepening hatred of the hypocrisy that damned me to this hell. An eternity passed, and my torment receded, bringing me back from the precipice of madness. The descent had destroyed me, and yet I lived.
Raziel, you are worthy. I know you, Raziel. You are worthy.
What madness is this? What pitiful form is this that I have come to inhabit? Death would be a release next to this travesty.
You did not survive the abyss, Raziel. I have only spared you from total dissolution.
I would choose oblivion over this existence.
The choice is not yours.
I am destroyed.
You are reborn. The birth of one of Kain's abominations traps the essence of life. It is this soul that animates the corpse you lived in. And that, Raziel, is the demise of Nosgoth. There is no balance. The souls of the dead remain trapped. I cannot spin them in the wheel of fate. They cannot complete their destinies. Redeem yourself. Or if you prefer, avenge yourself. Settle your dispute with Kain. Destroy him and your brethren. Free their souls and let the wheel of fate churn again. Use your hatred to reave their souls. I can make it possible. Become my soul Reaver, my angel of death.
Cast out from death's cold embrace, we find our soul reborn as an ethereal wraith in an abysmal lair of our enigmatic benefactor, a tentacle mass sprawled under the lake of the dead. This cephalopod claims to be an unknown elder god responsible for the continuous function of the Wheel of Fate. Moreover, our new master. We then cast our mind briefly to our old master, the architect of our downfall, Kain. Kain was once a human of petty noble lineage. Unbeknownst to Kain, he was born a member of a circle of guardians of Nosgoth, represented by a pillar and its principle. The pillars were inextricably tied to the spiritual and physical health of the land. Kain, however, was betrayed, being turned into a vampire in his quest for revenge by the necromancer Mortanius, and later, upon murdering each of the guardians, he eventually learned the truth of his lineage and was faced with an impossible choice of redemption at the cost of his own life. Sacrifice himself and allow the guardians and pillars to be reborn. Kain instead chose in his hubris to allow the pillars and Nosgoth itself to fall into a perpetual cycle of decay. Kain raised a cadre of vampires to serve him in his new kingdom. Now we, acting as the protagonist Raziel, hunt down our former brothers and master in a similar act of revenge that Kain once undertook. This is the full story of
Soul Reaver.
Departing the Elder God's chambers, we trace our way up the corridor adorned with cephalopod shell spirals, no doubt the symbol of the deity, and find ourselves at a gate to which he instructs.
These gates twist space, laying a path across great spans.
Stepping atop the steps to activate the gate, the great portal then thrums to life. We then view other gateways peppered across Nosgoth that we have to discover before we can travel between the two. Exiting via the door to our left, we find a new room that's full of pillars inscribed with glyphs, and find our strength levers as the Elder God explains.
You are weak. You must feed.
The old hunger has left me. I have no desire for blood.
You are changed. Your bloodthirst is replaced by a deeper need. You have become a devourer of souls. To sustain your strength, you must hunt the lost spirits of the underworld and consume the souls of your enemies.
Much like this tentacle god and his wheel, we too now must feed on spirits. However, after doing so, we attempt to leave and are thwarted by an invisible barrier.
You have much to learn, Raziel. When you are ready, this barrier will be dissolved.
Forced to turn back to the swirling green energies. We then open our cloak, exposing our fangs and missing jaw, as well as open more as we greedily absorb the life force of the dearly departed. Wholly satiated, we see our own glowing life meter that mimics the Elder God's, a green spiral at the bottom right of the screen, glowing, resplendent, and full. Stumbling over the hurdles, getting used to our new spectral form, or lack thereof, we then find we have new abilities, such as a high jump.
Your wings, though ruined, are not without purpose. Take hold of them as you leap, and they will carry you across this chasm.
The vestige of our wings' tattered remains then carry us across the chasm, allowing us not to take flight proper, but instead slows our descent. Turning the next corner, revulsed, we question.
What scabrous wretches are these?
Sua, the scavengers of the underworld. Their feral hunger has claimed countless souls, spirits who now shall never find their rest.
Indeed, these feral ghouls attempt to hide from our gaze, stalking aimlessly around the pillars. Although the first is dispatched easily in combat, and we absorb its soul, the second takes flight. The slewer being scuttling cowardly scavengers, the hyenas/jackals of the spectral realm. They prey on the lost souls of the spirit world, and are brazen when in packs, but will try and flee to a safer distance if encountered alone. Heading up the final corridor as the light shimmers on the walls, we look up and realize that we've been underwater this entire time, and yet have not felt the weight of its presence.
These portals are your conduit between the spectral and material realms. With their aid, you may gather matter and will yourself to become manifest in the physical world. This is taxing, however. Your strength must first be fully restored. You require no conduit to return to this plane. You may abandon your physical body at any time.
Willing ourselves into the material world through the portal, the very reality begins to warp, pitch, and shift to something more familiar, more palatable.
Sustain your strength to prolong your manifestation in the physical world. If you fail to feed or absorb too many wounds, this fragile matter will dissolve.
Now, fun fact, if I may deviate from the story a moment and give Soul Reaver its much-deserved roses, as what we've seen with this plane-shifting ability is not only a monumental technical feat for the game and the time, but also, sometime after the release of Soul Reaver, it was revealed by Dennis Dyack of Silicon Knights that it had originally been intended as a standalone title and was altered to become a sequel to Blood Omen instead. The concept was called Shifter, obviously a reference to the plane-shifting gameplay mechanic, and the storyline involved the main character being thrown down by his master and brothers, only to return to hunt them down, if that sounds familiar. The game itself would incorporate angelic and other biblical imagery. However, back to Raziel's plight. Gaining our bearings in the physical world, we see the underwater entrance to the underworld is now blocked, the only clue to its existence being the spiral symbol etched in the wall.
You are young yet, Raziel. You still retain many of your vampiric weaknesses. Immersion in water, while not fatal, will dissolve your physical body, forcing your return to the spirit world. Be aware that in the spectral realm, water has neither heft nor lift. It stands as thin as air.
Barely crossing the gap successfully, the water licks at our heels.
Creatures.
Do you not recognize them? They are the children of your brother, Duma.
That's impossible. These foul, scuttling beasts could not be kin of our high blood?
Do you suppose that time stood still for you, Raziel? Much has changed since you passed from the world of men.
Appalled at the very notion, our brother's clan has sunk so low. We begin to scan the room. To the left, over the water, we see our exit is barred, high above. And to the right, light bleeds into the room.
I knew my opponent's weaknesses, having suffered them myself. Physical wounds are fleeting. Vampire's immortal flesh begins to close as soon as it is cleaved. Vampires need only fear those wounds that impale or inflame. Water scorches like acid, and fledglings are devastated by sunlight's touch. would have to modify my tactics to suit my foes.
Wasting no time, our two hungry adversaries close in on us, and our battle begins in earnest.
Unfettered from the flesh, a creature's soul fades swiftly into the spectral realm. Draw it in quickly, Raziel, or you will be compelled to follow.
As we dispatch our foes, we discover the human corpse rend asunder, and discover the vampires, despite their wretched state, still require blood. Now, as a gameplay aside, if we leap into the water, we quickly discover its acidic properties as we're ripped from the physical realm back into our spiritual form. And it should also be noted, we discover a stamina boosting boon, as Soul Reaver is littered with collectibles. However, we cannot access it due to the grating, and Soul Reaver also imparts powers and abilities piecemealed over time for Raziel's arsenal, and features, well, an excessive amount of backtracking. As this series is first and foremost lore play focused on narrative, unfortunately we just don't have the time to hunt down some collectibles, though there are 100% walkthroughs and handy guides online for the completionists out there. Heading back to the center of this macabre tunnel, we see above our exit, though no discernible way to get there, until a voice exclaims,
Your physical prowess surpasses what you knew in life. Even massive obstacles can be moved effortlessly.
Digging our powerful claws into the side of the block, we find they can even pierce metal, and we have the strength to drag it across the room. Plus, pressing square initiates a handy push mechanic. Leaping from the block, we make our way out of this dreary sewer, racing around the final serpentine corridor, and to our horror, discover what has become of Nosgoth as we take our first steps outside.
My God! The sanctuary of the clans reduced to ruin. Beyond these walls lay the pillars of Nosgoth, the seat of Kain's empire. How humble it now appeared, collapsing into the dust of its former magnificence. And yet, I had only just emerged. In the instant between my execution and resurrection, centuries had apparently passed.
This world is wrecked with cataclysms. The earth strains to shrug off the pestilence of Kain's parasitic empire. The fate of this world was preordained in an instant by a solitary man. Unwilling to martyr himself to restore Nosgoth's balance, Kain condemned the world to the decay you see. In that moment, the unraveling began. Now it is nearly played out. Nosgoth teeters on the brink of collapse. Its fragile balance cannot hold.
As we look in horror at the state of the clan's citadels, we know our dark journey has just begun. Exiting the underworld, we begin our task of hunting down our brothers and Kain for their betrayal some 500 years ago. And what better place to start than the ruined sanctuary of clans? However, as we move to enter, we see a fledgling Dumahim and take care of the monstrosity. However, we soon find our entrance is barred.
The doors of the sanctuary were immovable, either barred from the inside or rusted shut. I would need to find another means of entry.
Turning about face, we see a narrow chasm and heft a rock to take care of another fledgling Dumahim in our path. Once the body is burned, we absorb its soul for its precious life essence and find a lingering Dumahim in which we can attack via stealth. Just ahead, between two lit beacons, we find another warp gate. Exiting the warp gate, we're ambushed by another Dumahim. However, without a way to finish our enemy, we then retreat and find ourselves at the cusp of the accursed Lake of the Dead. Turning, we see not even the Dumahim is game to approach. Crossing the rickety bridge, we then exclaim.
This, at least, had remained constant. The endlessly swirling vortex of the abyss, my tomb, and the womb of my rebirth. Though much of Nosgoth's landscape had changed, these cliffs gave me my bearings. My clan territory was to the west. I was anxious to see how my descendants had fared during the centuries of my absence.
Leaping over the hazardous chasm, we then enter the cave and find more Dumahim bar our path, a troubling sign for our clan. Through a small wooden door, as we enter our old citadel, we find a trap has been sprung, and a pair of Dumahim fledglings move from behind the pillars and begin their assault. As we execute our former brother's assassins under the auspices of our own defaced statue, the gate into our inner sanctum is opened, an invitation we willingly take. Stepping inside, we're shocked to find
Utter desolation. My once proud kin wiped from this world like excrement from a boot. I knew the hand that wrought this deed.
Although ascending the stairs, we're not shocked to see a duo of adult Dumahim, much more powerful than their counterparts. With our sanctuary somewhat cleansed, we head to the door just to our right and find our own personal warp gate still intact. Heading back into the courtyard, through the wooden door to the left, we learn the infestation of Dumahim is still prevalent. Deeper inside our stony fortress, we find ourselves in the open inner cloister, where the Dumahim have taken up residence. With our enemies dispatched, we then begin to climb the spiral stairs of the old abandoned tower, but quickly find it hasn't been abandoned fully. Pulling the switch on the far wall, a drawbridge lowers. And we enter the inner bowels of the ruins, only to discover not even the roof had been spared by the Dumahim, as acid rain begins to pour in and burns and singes our new blue flesh. Leaping to the nearby arch for a better vantage point, we see a new enemy in the distance.
No! Please!
I didn't recognize these flayed racks of flesh. Their scent was vampiric. They gnawed upon their victim's carcass like dogs.
Morbidly intrigued by these janky ghouls, we take flight and land between them. The first instinct is to attack. As their body thankfully burns like any other, we then turn to see another symbol that's familiar. Not the Dumahim, but instead another clansman we didn't expect to see in our old fortress.
This charnel house bore the unmistakable marks of Melchiah's clan. To what depths had our dynasty plummeted if these ghouls were the descendants of my high-born brother? Were they so debased as to recruit fledglings from the desiccated corpses here interred?
The ghoulish Melchiah then leaps into the ground and reappears, wrapped in racked flesh that it rends from its victims. Its beady red eyes belie only one instinct: feral hunger. Exiting the graveyard to our right, we find under an archway a reprieve from the acid rain and see the ledge to our left is much too high to leap to, and begin to utilize a square stone slab as leverage. Once we're atop the ledge, we turn a corner to see a macabre mural of our brother Melchiah.
My brother Melchiah was made last, and therefore received the poorest portion of Kain's gift. Although immortal, his soul could not sustain the flesh, which retained much of its previous human frailty. This weakness, it seemed, was passed on to his offspring. Their fragile skins barely contained the underlying decay.
Taking a moment to almost pity the visage of Melchiah. We're ambushed by one of his offspring. With any semblance of pity now leaving us, we realize death is the only release in which they can wish for. We then find pathetic fledglings, barely sentient and desperately in need of new flesh. With the fledglings too stupid to avoid sunlight, we release them from the mortal coil, heading through the nearby ornate steel gate, and descending stairs in what seems like forever in a claustrophobic spiral until we find Melchiah's own warp gate, squirreled down underground, like the mausoleum itself. On the other side of the gate, we find a large open space and lake that seems to be comprised of acid, just like the unending rain. And by the far wall, we find our presence has disturbed another Melchiahim's slumber. Attempting to cross the unforgiving lake, we make one miscalculation, which casually tears the flesh from our body, sending us back to the bottom of the lake and the spectral realm. Feeding on the scavenging slough, we then head topside and return to the material realm, this time to cross the lake successfully. Once doing so, an adult Melchiahim challenges us on the cusp of the lake, but putting them on the back foot spells disaster for the ghoul's flesh. Inside the nearby mausoleum, we disregard the fledgling undead, but instead make a beeline for the door with Melchiah's symbol smeared in blood above in deference for their master. Once inside, we find cavernous rocky walls that are narrow yet impossibly high. To our right, around a corner, a burnt corpse that we cannot identify but was once one of Melchiah's subjects, we suspect. However, the corpse's fate and why this ornate mausoleum hasn't been plundered, or perhaps it had, leaves us at a quandary. And so we follow Melchiah's symbols, which are adorned above a grate, and see that we cannot pass. It's then as we look around the mausoleum and its plentiful pillars, we then ascertain perhaps the spectral realm will move said pillars in favor of our needs.
Beware, Raziel. These wraiths are vampire spirits, fettered too long in the spectral realm. When their vampire natures adapt to this plane, they become eaters of souls. Do not allow these spirits to re-inhabit their corpses.
Although we hear these vampiric wraiths, we cannot see the angle of their attacks, and wonder if they would see us as their kin, but our question is quickly answered. With our enemy defeated, we climb high atop a rocky ledge for a better vantage point, and find a portal to phase shift back to the material realm. Once doing so, we leap to the ledge to our left and trace it to a nearby opening that is also barred. Seeing a stone block on the nearby ledge, we then quickly discern this is one of Soul Reaver's many block puzzles, and we learn the new ability to press L1 plus square to flip said block on the ledge above. In the room ahead, we find two platforms hanging by chains on either side of the room. Seeing our exit is on the platform just past them, we then leap across to the platform on the right. However, our weight begins to push down the platform. And so with our exit barred and no way to reach the platform, we see at the far side of the wall another nook for a push block. Finding said push block nestled in the wall, we then begin to drag it down and across the room into the pit, being forced to fight vampire fledglings incensed by our intrusion. With the fledglings taken care of, we're then free to push the block up onto the next ledge, and following the steps above, are able to push the block into its intended resting place. Perplexed, it's only when we enter the room from the same platform as before and see the two platforms, one raised and the other lowered, do we realize we must leverage our weightless spectral form as we pounce onto the higher platform, which doesn't shake and stir at our disturbance. And again, it should be mentioned, this is a brilliant use of this shifting mechanic and integrating it with puzzles in Soul Reaver. In the next room, we cannot leave it or attempt to solve its puzzle as we're still caught in the spectral realm, but also have to wait till our energy bar fills, which it naturally does when in the spectral realm. And so as we stand on the phasing portal, it's a good time to enjoy Raziel's idle scratching animation. On either side of the room, we then see a nook with a symbol embedded in the wall. With two blocks present in the room, this puzzle is simple as all we need to do is find said symbols and make sure that they align with the symbol in the wall so they unlock the bars ahead with a satisfying click. Making our way up the stone ramp and double doors, we then turn to our right and find ourselves back at the acid-washed lake. Ahead of us is another piece of a stamina unlockable, which is not accessible at this time. The only difference of our presence here is we see another stone block to our left, which we can push below. And as we follow it down, we see, just to our right, a previously inaccessible ledge which, when utilizing two of the stone blocks together, we can now successfully scale. Inside the narrow stone hall with wooden pillars that gird the walls, we follow it until we find another opening and small acid-like lake. Playing rock, paper, Melchiah with its lone sentry. On the other side of the lake, we find what appears to be a small entrance to a mausoleum. However, it's blocked by its own guardian, who mistakenly had been camping near a bonfire. With the path clear, we enter the small mausoleum's metal door, finding inside 2 ghoulish fledglings, their brains so decomposed they seem to have little aversion to stepping into the deadly light. Ascending the ramp, we begin to edge our way into the bowels of Melchiah's fortress, finding a certain malaise has overcome his followers, as if they haven't fed in some time. Inside the spacious main hall, we step onto a large, ornate platform, mechanical in nature. On the far side of the hall behind a pillar, we indeed find a switch to descend said platform. However, its mechanism needs to be in operation. And so we use the nearby metal grating lift to descend to the lower floors, and we step over a dead Melchiah, his heart pierced. Quickly discerning his attacker, we see up a ramp a human bearing a crossbow, and he puts said crossbow in the air to surrender to us, perhaps not knowing what we are and falling to his knees in deference. It should be noted, how you treat humans in Kegacy of Kain can vary on how they will actually approach you. Some will worship Raziel, others will attack him on sight. Heading inside the nearby door up the ramp to our left, we then find a large machine room as we had divined. Repositioning the gears and then pulling the lever, we can then reactivate the machine. Back in the main hall with the ornate platform, we see the platform has subsequently dropped, and although there are a few puzzles to get the platform and subsequent gate to open and to lower again, it's a bit of a needlessly intricate section, and so instead we shall focus on what lies beneath the now unbarred tunnel ahead, as a crimson glow welcomes us in the belly of the gladiatorial pit, and an unsettling voice from the shadows to match.
Show yourself, creature!
Do you not recognize me, brother? Am I so changed?
Melchiah?
Yes, brother. You should have stayed where the Master sent you, Raziel. You will find Nosgoth less pleasant than you remember.
What has become of my clan? Answer me, little brother, or I will beat an answer from your horrid lips.
Everyone is afraid, sibling. You awake to a world of fear. These times of change are so unsettling. Do you think I feel no revulsion for this form? Do you believe for a moment that our Lord would risk his empire upon an upstart inheritance?
Enough riddles. What are you saying?
You are the last to die.
The gargantuan amalgam of flesh then falls on us, and as we back up, we see its individual bodies scurrying as hands and feet ducking between our brother's bites. As we attempt to hit him with our own glancing blows, he mockingly laughs. Attempting to find an exit from this pit, we then see Melchiah phase through the very gladiatorial cage, as if it was nothing. Desperate, we back up to where we found Melchiah and see this is probably where he watches the gladiatorial matches and feeds. And spy high above his mechanical grinder, he no doubt puts his victims in to sort through their skin later. Attempting to activate the grinder, we find the switch will not move, and Melchiah's bloated form menacingly begins to edge nearer. skirting the outside of the round pit. We then spy an archway we can perch upon for a moment of respite. Melchiah peers up at us patiently. Realizing that we cannot face him, we leap down into the room and find a lever in which we can open the spiked grate, and as Melchiah attempts to enter, we release it upon his bloated carcass. However, the spikes cannot hold. Melchiah, enraged and with a snarl, bites deep into our flesh, forcing us into the spectral realm, where he, in his phased form, can still attack us. Desperately searching for any speck of spectral energy we can feed upon. When our energy bar is full and we're once again made whole, we shift into the material realm. Melchiah, desperate and hungry, begins to stalk us once more, and we execute the same falling spike move on his neck. Somehow in the distance, we then hear that the lever to Melchiah's personal grinder has fortuitously come loose. Perhaps it can only be activated after the cages in which his victims lie are open. Whatever the case, we need the fleshy amalgam called Melchiah inside of that cage. And thus, we jump into his bloody gladiatorial pit, waiting for him to hungrily follow. We leap over the fence and race to activate the lever while he is still trapped inside.
Tell me, Melchiah, where can I find Kain?
The Master is beyond your reach, Raziel. He makes himself known when he sees fit, not when commanded. I am released.
You have done well, Raziel.
Am I reduced to this? A ghoul? A fratricide?
Elevated, Raziel, not reduced. Consuming Melchiah's soul has endowed you with a new gift. Insubstantial barriers such as these are no impediment to you in the spectral realm. Will yourself to pass through, and you shall.
With Melchiah's putrid essence now a mist, we had absorbed his essence, and in the spectral realm, can successfully phase through grates, as Melchiah once did. With our new ability, the impediment of grating that bars us from the sanctuary of clans and Kain's throne. Post-defeating the sprawling mass, once known as our brother Melchiah, and robbing him of his power to phase through objects, we depart his putrid necropolis to hunt down our other betraying vampiric kin, only to be guided by the Elder God.
Return to the sanctuary of the clans, Raziel. Melchiah's soul has endowed you with the means to gain entry. Beware, however. This hollow derelict is abandoned, but not uninhabited.
Before we hunt down whoever has taken up residence in the clan's former sanctuary, this is a good time to showcase a hidden collectible / eldritch power Raziel can find throughout the game. To do so, we must enter the pond in wraith form and phase through the nearby gate. Leveraging our new ability, leads us to a room with 3 columns, and the form of one ex-guardian of Nosgoth, the mentalist Nutraptor that we contended with in Blood Omen, linked at the end of this video. Returning to the material realm, we can then push over the 3 pillars pointing to the mind symbol in the middle of the room, and unlock the Force glyph.
Once acquired, these glyphs empower you with elemental lore. Each spell exacts a sacrifice of energy, however. Use them sparingly and wisely.
The Force glyph, which we shall test on enemies soon enough, consumes 1 point of eldritch energy, which we see as glowing orbs and is either located in certain areas or randomly spawned after devouring enemies. Also of note, just near the exit of the lake is a golden triangle representing a health power-up behind grating.
These artifacts enhance your stamina, enabling you to prolong your material manifestation. Gather 5 to complete the emblem, and thereby augment your strength.
And it's important to reiterate, none of these powers are necessary to complete the game, and we may not collect them all, however, they're at least worth a look. Returning to the clan's sanctuary, we find the entrance is still sealed tight, however, just as the Elder God had promised. To the right, we find grating, which, with our new ability, we easily phase through. After which, we then acquire a second health power-up. Rounding the next corner, we then find the temple's entrance featuring a tranquil bridge surrounded by water and slew of sentries on the prowl. After the slewer's souls are siphoned sardonically, we phase back into the material realm. Only to be met with 2 guards worthy of respect, a duo of adult Dumahim. Perhaps a perfect time to test our new power as we cast a force wave against our foes. Though not executed perfectly, we're thankful for small blessings. With the Dumahim destroyed, we see at the temple's entrance another of the brutes, clearly muscled to keep us out, and so we quickly divine bypassing them via the spectral realm may alleviate the need for confrontation altogether. Phasing through the gates and following the circular halls anti-clockwise, we follow the familiar path to the place of our betrayal, the home of the pillars and Kain's throne. But as we march our way through the large keyhole door, it snaps shut behind us in a trap, and were met with a presence we had not yet anticipated to face so soon.
Raziel.
Kain!
The Abyss has been unkind.
I am your creation, Kain. Now, as before, you criticize your own work. What have you done with my clan, degenerate? You have no right.
What I have made, I can also destroy, child.
Damn you, Kain! You are not God! This act of genocide is unconscionable!
Conscience? You dare to speak to me of conscience? Only when you have felt the full gravity of choice should you dare question my judgment. Your life's span is a flicker compared to the mass of doubt and regret that I have borne since Mortanius first turned me from the light. To know that the fate of the world hangs dependent on the advisedness of my every deed? Can you even begin to conceive what action you would take in my position?
I would choose integrity, Kain.
Look around you, Raziel. See what has become of our empire. Witness the end of an age. The clans scattered to the corners of Nosgoth. This place has outlasted its usefulness. As have you.
The Soul Reaver, Kain's ancient blade, older than any of us and 1,000 times more deadly. The legends claimed that the blade was possessed and thrived by devouring the souls of its victims. For all our bravado, we knew what it meant when Kain drew the Soul Reaver in anger. It meant you were dead.
Kain then teleports behind us and begins to charge the Reaver. Before we can charge at him, he unleashes an unavoidable tendril of golden lightning that strips our flesh from our very being in an instant. Probing the pillars for energies, we see perhaps the fallen spirits of those who have displeased Kain in the past, vampire wraiths that still haunt this place. Becoming material once more, we ambush Kain, still charging his sword. However, attempting the same move a second time proves there is no escaping the Reaver's electric judgment. Repeating our defeating of the wraiths and returning to the material plane, Kain almost preternaturally senses our ambush. Exhausted, frustrated, and depleted, we're set upon by the hungry wraiths yet again, wondering the entire time, is Kain just toying with us? This time, we ambush Kain with our new eldritch power bequeathed by the Force Glyph, but are shocked when he simply turns to mock our attempts. Landing a third and final slash against the vampire in front of his throne, an enraged Kain then shows us the true power of his Reaver.
The blade is vanquished, so it unfolds, and we are a step closer to our destinies.
I swore I saw a glint of satisfaction in Kain's eye when the Soul Reaver was destroyed. I did not understand the game that Kain was playing, but I knew the finishing move.
From this moment and ever afterward, you and this blade are inextricably bound. Soul Reaver and Reaver of Souls, your destinies are intertwined. By destroying the sword, you have liberated it from its corporeal prison and restored it to its true form, a wraith blade, its energy unbound. No longer a physical blade, it can only manifest itself in the material realm when your strength is fully restored. Once manifest, it will sustain you.
What are you, little soul? Another of Kain's creatures come to taunt this bound spectre.
I did not intend to disturb your rest.
Rest. A body is needed for sleep. Flesh and bones are required to recline. No, child. All I may do is watch and remember, ceaselessly conscious as this wretched world's history unfurls. Ghastly past, insufferable future, are they one and the same? Am I always here?
How have you come to haunt these pillars?
Kain refused the sacrifice. The pillar of balance, corrupted to its core, stands as a monument to his blind ambition. Now these pillars serve only to bind me here, my prison and eternal home, thanks to the avarice of your master, Kain.
That bastard can claim no allegiance from me.
Then we share a common foe, Raziel. Return here when you have need. Ariel remembers what others have forgotten.
Funny, Ariel has offered to help us, in a similar vein to her behavior to Kain and Blood Omen, where she would act as a guide as she provides hints to Raziel whenever we return to the pillars.
Far in the eastern mountains, a stifled titan stands in mute surrender, unwilling host to a parasitic swarm.
And we also learn we can restore our energies in this place. Now with the Reaver as a key to exit the once barred doors, they fall easily before us and our quest for vengeance continues. Exiting the sanctuary of clans, the ethereal Soul Reaver now bound to us. The Elder God then instructs of our next target.
Your brother Zephon's keep lies far to the east, beyond the ruins that greeted your first exit from the underworld. He and his brood have cocooned themselves in a derelict cathedral, having murdered its human guardians.
A cathedral now silenced. This is as good a time as any to now test the efficacy of our new spectral weapon. Phasing back into the material plane, we try our fully charged Soul Reaver on a loitering Dumahim as well. With our foe felled quickly, we realize the ghost Ariel perhaps had given us a similar, albeit cryptic clue guiding.
Far in the eastern mountains, a stifled titan stands in mute surrender, unwilling host to a parasitic swarm.
As the Elder God had instructed, Zephon's keep can be found via the underworld, And this is as good a time as any to showcase an interesting mechanic in Soul Reaver, whereby leaping from the point where Raziel was once cast into the Lake of the Dead returns us to the Elder God's sanctuary where he greets.
As my agent, you are beyond death, Raziel. Your enemies cannot destroy you. If you grow too weak, however, you will always be drawn here to recover.
Furthermore, standing on the block under the trio of swirling green orbs, the Elder God will reiterate our current mission with a slightly varying dialogue.
Seek out Zephon's lair, Raziel. Beyond the ruins that greet your exit from the underworld. Armed with the Soul Reaver, you may gain entry where your path was previously blocked.
So, the Reaver is the key. Interesting. It should also be noted, if instead we'd entered the door to the left of the Sanctuary of Clans and headed towards the Underworld's entrance via the room we first encountered the feeding fledgling Dumahim, we can now enter the body of water and warp through the gate to pick up a piece of previously inaccessible health power-up. Exiting from the west in the material realm, we see the entrance to the underworld to the north is sealed, and past the Stonehenge, to the east, as promised, the now accessible grating to the silenced cathedral. Once inside, we find ahead the cathedral with its towers claws to the sky. To the left is a health upgrade inaccessible at this point. To the right of the path, we see the tower has been claimed by the Zephon clan. Following the path until we reach the cathedral's drawbridge, we see the Reaver is the only key in which the door would permit. But why would Kain seal Zephon in his makeshift lair? Returning to the material plane, the door yields before the energies of the Reaver. As we move to enter, we spy a disgusting arachnid-like sentry guarding the gate. Although we stab at it, it's knocked out of harm's way. Entering the spectral realm, we phase through the grating, heading right and over a chasm to shift back via the portal plane, contending with the first two Zephon fledglings. Following the outskirts of the city, we're then led to the courtyard. Opening its great double doors, we see a sizable area the humans once inhabited, and a higher ledge leading to the cathedral proper. Entering the courtyard, it should be noted there's nothing really interesting on the ground level, bar a few lingering spider-like vampires. Looking to our right, we begin our ascension via the rooftops. It should also be noted, as we land on the highest ledge, gazing back over the humans' once bustling outpost, something that Soul Reaver players already know. The Silent Cathedral is the most sprawling and intricate dungeon in Soul Reaver, featuring some of the most lengthy puzzles. Therefore, to keep things narrative focused and hasten our encounter to discover what happened to our rogue brother Zephon, we will be showcasing a more condensed version of the drawn-out elements of this wretched hive, while still also highlighting its complexities and curiosities. Speaking of which, we see a vampire fledgling deep in the cathedral's crevice with one of its victims. The Zephon, like arachnid, take the fell task of cocooning their prey in webs to either feed or turn their victims into Zephon. This transformation seemed to have started with the widening of the mouth, or could be the outcome of mutilation caused by their captors. So fiendish are these ambushing prey that we decide it best to only face them when absolutely necessary. Entering the cathedral proper, we exclaim.
Once a testament to mankind's defiance of Kain's empire, this towering cathedral now stood derelict. The humans who worshipped here, dead for centuries. Its architects conceived this tower as a holy weapon against the vampire menace, a colossal instrument of brass and stone. The cathedral's pipes, once tuned to blast a deadly hymn, now stood silent, and these vacant spaces whistled their impotence.
Looking at the cathedral's deafened pipes, there is no way up. However, we wonder, perhaps we could begin our treacherous climb of them via the spectral realm. And maybe we could once again activate the cathedral's rumoured deafening sounds that would rid the hallowed grounds of the wretched residents. Shifting back into the material plane and jumping on the platform to the right above our head, we follow this path until we reach a ledge with 2 doors and a switch. Activating the switch reveals a wooden bellow, although we seemingly need to activate the second as well. Heading to the door on the right, we phase into a room that depicts humans worshipping a multi-headed, multi-armed, unknown deity. We then find in the material realm. This would be our first picture block puzzle. The only piece of real-world advice I have to impart is, all you have to do is flip the block to show the face in the direction that you need. Aligning said blocks from that point becomes easy, as you only need to rotate them on one side. Once completing the mural, we're then bequeathed a cutscene showing that a ledge has now been revealed for the final switch. Heading to the second switch does not yield a second block puzzle, but instead an ambush by the Zephon. Passing the poor human victim, or what remains of him, we activate said switch. Now, the second wooden bellow will descend, and we then pause and look closer at the mural, wondering if the wind these beings wield is perhaps related to a fully functional cathedral, and its ability to be used as a weapon. Back up the ramp on the platform, leaping on both wooden bellows, turns on the airflow. Allowing us to ascend, we leap into the pit and take flight. High above, we come to a winding ramp enclosed in elaborate decorated glass that houses a bell. The trick here is to ring the bell, then run across the opening, glide down and ring a second bell down the ramp while the first bell still rings. Done right, it'll shatter the glass wall that's blocking our path. Heading to where the glass used to be, we find a crank on the right wall. This crank will trigger a timed door, and it will close in 3 seconds or so, hence why it's essential we break the glass wall. Activating the crank, we stop time's cruel ploy to hinder our progression, and then quickly shift into the spectral plane. The door will not shut, as the spectral realm does not adhere to the rules of time like the material plane. Entering the door right next to the bell, and keep it jammed open turning the lever. However, to proceed, we must backtrack and solve the 2 puzzle rooms in the bell area. Both of the puzzle rooms have the same concept. Flip the blocks into the alcoves to form a conduit with the pipes, allowing the wind to flow easily through them, a theme that will carry throughout the cathedral. We then hear a clicking sound if we get the blocks at the right place. Now, none of this is difficult per se, but incredibly time consuming, especially if you mess up the blocks like I do. Once we solve each puzzle, curiously, cutscene will show a far-off glass dome from a future puzzle breaking. All 4 domes must be broken for us to ascend further. Back where the lever had opened, we can now use the pipes as stairs, and see this is a nesting area to cocoon victims and fresh meat for the spiderlings. Moving up the pipes leads us to the glass dome room. The domes protect the switches to the airshaft next to it, and our objective becomes clear: to shatter the 2 remaining domes. Passing through the gate, and then shifting back using the planar portal on the other side, we make our way through the left hallway to Valve Room 1. The Valve Room, which has an identical twin, has 3 valves that must be opened in a certain order to release a note that breaks the domes encasing the switches outside. With all 4 switches activated, the fans begin to churn, and our higher path in the tower now revealed. Landing on the pipes above, we notice the airflow is disturbed by the broken pipes, which we must correct, as the final area is all about closing said pipes. Inside the room ahead, we see the web has thickened as the arachnid taint grows increasing, and above us is a 3-pronged pipe facing up, promising to take us to the tip of the tower. The catch being, we must make all 3 pipes airflow first. To do so, we fight our way to a room to the right, housing a great organ, no doubt the instrument meant to blast a sound that would destroy the very vampires before the humans were destroyed here long ago. Looking for a second switch, we find in the next room a bell. However, once rung does not begin a new puzzle, but instead alerts the pupating Zephon to our presence. The second switch in the room above is activated by dragging a nearby block to a valve guarded by a fledgling spider demon and an adult Zephon, which is an intense fight when set upon together, especially without the Reaver. The third and final switch is found in a cavernous room of death littered with Zephon offspring and is only made available after closing the large pipe that was broken, no doubt thanks to its occupants long ago. With all three pipes once again functional, we glide upwards, leveraging the air draft into a cavern almost entirely composed of web that feels more like a bug's nest or lair than any discernible architecture. In the room to the right, we then locate Zephon's personal warp gate. Down the hall, we discover a large opening and see a flame flicker. Approaching, we see the bloody remains of a bisected human bounty hunter. However, what cut him clean in half remains to be seen. Shifting to the spectral realm, although we cannot touch the organic matter, we tepidly enter the moist mound, seeing organic alien-like substance that is like a thick membrane all around, and human-like forms are etched into the very walls. Realizing whatever is here cannot be seen unless in the material realm, we phase shift and re-enter the large hive to see what looks to be an egg-laying sac, and then see we're in the nest of a malignant creature who descends menacingly.
Prodigal son. There is no returning for you, Raziel.
Zephon, your visage becomes you. It's an appropriate reflection of your soul.
And you are not his handsome Raziel anymore. His precious firstborn son turned betrayer. You have missed so many changes, little Raziel. Look around you. See how the human's weapon of destruction has become my home. Indeed, my body. A cocoon of brick and granite from which to watch a pupating world.
A crevice in which to cower, only scuttling from the shadows to devour a victim already ensnared in your cowardly trap. But you've made the mistake of leaving me unbound, and it is you who must succumb to my will.
Will, instinct, reflex action. The insect mind finds little difference. I warn you, brother. As my stature has grown, so it is matched by my appetite. Step forward, morsel.
A mantis-like claw then slashes at us, missing by mere inches as Zephon casually turns his manifold head to take a bite out of our hide. Backing up to survey the battle arena, we realize his body not only encompasses the chamber, but is fused to the very walls. One of his tendrils then quivers, preparing to strike, and as it hits the ground, we spin to lop the limb off. Zephon, momentarily stunned, screams enraged. Then a mucus-covered object falls out of his open egg sac. Before we could investigate, the insect-like creature lets out a flurry of counterattacks, sending us to the spectral realm, where thankfully he seems to have little presence. However, vampire wraiths pick up the slack instead. Returning to the material realm, the egg explodes in a foul, purple, noxious gas that smells distinctly flammable. This time, as Zephon's body reflexively convulses an egg, we pick it up and move out of striking range. Turning to see the sphincter-like door close behind us, spelling no escape. However, we now know how the vampire hunter was bisected, and standing near his corpse, we see the egg is indeed flammable. We then turn towards our bound brother and lob the ball of fire at his greasy belly. Dazed and disoriented, we need only hurl 2 more flaming seeds at the foul fiend for his carapace to catch alight as he screams.
Consuming Zephon's apostate soul has bestowed on you a new gift. Like his vampire spawn, you're able to scale certain walls which are otherwise impassable, but only in the physical realm. In the spirit world, these insubstantial edifices will not support you.
Post disposing of the sack-bound insectoid Zephon in his lair, the Elder God instructs to us not of our next brother to dispose of, but an unlikely and dark secret to uncover.
In the mountains beyond the pillars, Nosgoth's cataclysms have exposed an ancient crime. Endowed with Zephon's soul, you may now progress where your path was hitherto impeded.
Curious about said crime, we take a moment back at the Stonehenge near the underworld to test out our new wall scaling abilities and find another health upgrade. After which, when returning to Kain's throne in the clan's sanctuary, the wandering spirit of Ariel further guides.
Like a corpse in a shallow grave, corruption rises to the surface. Beyond these pillars, the defiled victim mutely screams its outrage.
Looking around Kain's throne room, we see perched above an orifice to enter. To our left, one of the structural pillars has been scratched and etched near Zephon's flag. No doubt, the scurrying sycophant's handiwork so he could get a better vantage point. Ascending to the top of the throne room, we head down the decorated hallway to a duo of doors. Through the door to our right, we then see a great waterfall and courtyard below, leading to a tunnel, as well as what appears to be the remains of a Dumahim. Gliding to the ground, we take inventory quickly, seeing the Dumahim guard lackadaisically patrol, as if not too interested in whatever they've been tasked to guard. Whatever the case, we enter the tunnel, carving a swath through our enemies. Exiting the other side of the passage, we recognize
the ancient tomb of the Sarapan, once impenetrably sealed, now ravaged by Nosgoth's upheavals, its mysteries lay exposed. In the time of Vorador, centuries before Kain was made, the Sarapan warrior priests waged a merciless war against the vampire tribes of Nosgoth. Emboldened by righteousness, they committed unspeakable and indiscriminate acts of violence, massacring fledglings and ancients alike. They decimated entire bloodlines in mere decades. Now their husks lay here, murderers enshrined.
But what crimes could we find in an old crypt, as the Elder God had hinted, we wonder? The Sarapan were long extinct, and under whose orders did Duma's muscle guard the tomb? To the left of the circular park room, we climb the rocky ridge and find, nestled in the mountain, a secret warp gate. Looking closer at the stone mural, we see it depicts the Sarapan's ferocious leader and the ex-guardian of conflict, Malik. Brutal and ruthless in life, supposedly, until he met his untimely end by the hands of Kain in Blood Omen. Now, it should quickly be noted, something I missed in Malik's fight in Blood Omen is that when he unleashed a powerful wave of rolling death, Kain wasn't just going to escape via teleport, but the blast was meant to be so powerful it would take out Malik's fortress in his last-ditch effort to destroy Kain. Shifting to the spectral plane, we find the room lined with orbs of eldritch energy aplenty though. Thankfully, Malik's spirit does not linger. As we enter the grating behind the stone slab, the Elder God solemnly warns.
Take heed, Raziel. A forgotten history lies within. Know thyself, though it may destroy you.
Finding no immediate threat bar the semi-sentient slewer's spirits to be severed and consumed. We then re-enter the physical plane and are ambushed by the growingly agitated Dumahim. Their efforts to impede our path belies a sacrilegious secret we no doubt draw nearer to. Finally, finding the end of the wretched hall, we descend to the tomb below, musing.
As I pulled the stone free, a sigh of sepulchral air escaped the inner chamber. I was not prepared for what lay beyond this threshold. These crypts, defiled caskets of Seraphim saints, bearing my brothers' names and my own. The irony of Kain's blasphemous act rushed in on me with the crushing force of revelation. Were my hands not as bloody as these? Worse, I had spilled the blood of my brothers, these very comrades whose tombs lay ravaged before me.
Yes, Raziel, you were a Sarapan, born of the same force that all but destroyed your race. Before the dawn of the Empire, you were chosen. Kain, Nosgoth's solitary self-declared monarch, plundered this tomb and raised you from these crypts. Breathing his vampiric gift into your defiled corpses, he resurrected you as his favored sons.
Learning the unspeakable and baffling truth of our first resurrection, we're left in this desolate tomb, nursing our horrific revelation like a fresh head wound. This is a quick aside for all of you who, like myself, may be interested in the real-world etymology of Kain's ex-Sarapan spawn, as understanding the inspiration behind their names unlocks further clues about their lives as Sarapan, as well as vampires, and sometimes in their becoming more divine. Starting with Zephon. The name Zephon translates to a looking out. In biblical mythology, Zephon was a cherub and guardian prince of paradise who was sent by Gabriel and Ithuriel to discover the location of Satan. Instead, Zephon joined Satan's rebellion and was eventually cast out of heaven as a fallen angel after the battle was lost, forever charged with fanning the flames of hell. The reason I am such a fan of the cherub reference is the wiki also states that the bottom left vampire child seen in the start screen is meant to represent Zephon, an amazing biblical tie-in. To be honest, the entire start screen, depicting Raziel and his companions with angelic imagery, falling into a monstrous vampiric visage is a masterclass of foreshadowing by the developers, and during the development of Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, Zephon was codenamed Wallcrawler, or simply the Wallcrawler boss, based on his clan's ability to scale walls, of course. Likewise, during the development of Soul Reaver, Melchiah had the codename Skinner, or Skinner Boss, after the fate of his victims. He may have also been previously known as Hema or Rumen, both fallen angels associated with rage and death respectively. Ultimately, Melchiah is described as a fallen angel that serves the blood. Also of note, Melchiah was described as vain and searching for the most stunning specimens to skin. And as a subtle in-joke, the face is stitched together on the evolved Melchiah skin are Crystal Dynamics employees. Malik. The Sarapan's leader Malik's grave is obviously empty, as we had encountered the paladin/guardian of conflict in Blood Omen, where we learned, post his defeat by the hands of Vorador, his soul was fixed to his armor and his remains left hanging thanks to Mortanius. During Blood Omen's development, Malik was initially named Guillaume, the French equivalent of William. The name William derives from Germanic roots meaning will or desire and helmet/protection, highlighting the character's role as the timeless defender of the Circle of Nine. It is possible he underwent a rename to Malik to avert duplication with William the Just, the true identity of the Nemesis. Malik itself is a derivative of the Arabic Malik, meaning king or chieftain, which may relate to his role as the highest-ranking member of the Sarapan Brotherhood. Gustav Davidson's A Dictionary of Angels, including the Fallen Angels, states that Malik/Malek is a guardian angel of hell in Islamic mythology, who told the wicked that they must remain in hell forever because they abhorred the truth and when the truth was brought to them. Curiously, Malik's title in Blood Omen was Paladin. The term Paladin is derived from the Italian Palladino and the late Latin Palatinus, and was used to refer to the foremost warriors of Charlemagne's court. Through its usage in Dungeons & Dragons, it has since been adopted as a general term for archetypical holy knights or warriors. Ward, meanwhile, is an archaic Middle English term for a guard, watchman, or protector, though he quite famously failed in that task.
Call your dogs! They can feast on your corpses!
Tyrell, seen on screen from alpha gameplay, will not be encountered in this playthrough, so this is technically not a spoiler, as he'd been removed and so had the smokestack area of the game, as he was once slated to be the penultimate boss of Soul Reaver. Tyrell originally was known as Morlock during the early development of Soul Reaver, named after the similarly characterized Morlocks of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. Tyrell was also previously known as Hema or Rumen, both fallen angels associated with rage and death respectively. The name Tyrell itself is Hebrew for Rock of God. Duma. Now, while I do not wish to give away too much about the two remaining vampire encounters in-game, Duma's name is the Aramaic word for silence, and the character was actually named Duma very early in the production of Soul Reaver, before receiving an H for the final game. Gustav Davidson's A Dictionary of Angels, including the Fallen Angels, describes Duma as a figure in biblical mythology, the angel of silence and the stillness of death, prince of hell and angel of vindication. The same work cites his description in the Zohar, chief of demons in Gehinnom with 12,000 myriads of attendants, all charged with the punishment of the souls of sinners. Now, this is a slight spoiler, however, something to note for later. Duma was informally codenamed Ronin, or the Ronin boss, by Soul Reaver programming staff. In feudal Japan, Ronin were leaderless, disgraced samurai whose masters had either perished or disowned them. These aspects are reflected in both Duma's art design and the fate of his clan in the story, although we've obviously yet to discover the mystery of the seemingly scattered and leaderless Dumahim. Speaking of which, Rahab. During development of Soul Reaver, Rahab had the codename Aluka, or Aluka Boss, Aluka being Hebrew for leech, a term that has been used to describe mythical vampires in general. In biblical mythology, Rahab was prince of the primordial sea. Rahab was also the name of a prostitute in the Bible, but the wiki goes into pains to explain that doesn't mean Eidos used this as a building block for Rahab's character. Though, we'll save judgment for when we meet him. And finally, we come to the first of Kain's reborn lieutenants, Raziel. In real-world theology, Raziel is an archangel within the teachings of Jewish mysticism, who is the keeper of secrets and the angel of mysteries. This matches perfectly with his clan's symbols and the bones of his wings that look like a question mark. The name translates appropriately as Secret of God. Before we exit the tomb, we then pause, sensing lingering spiritual energies. And as we shift to the spectral realm, we fall. Contending with the slewer in this antechamber, we find ourselves at grating and phase through, leaping to a platform girt by water and guarded by a lingering vampiric wraith. Once dispatched, we phase back to the physical realm to find we are not alone.
Heretic, you shall not pass.
Such loyalty to one who has you guarding this outpost like a chained dog. Do you prosper on the scraps he casts you?
Your insults will do nothing to blunt the agonies of your demise.
Kain killed me once. Behold the result. I have no more to fear from you.
The Tomb Guardian then unleashes wave after wave of psychic energies, and we recognize it as a senior revived Turalim. Turel's clan are our most dangerous foes yet, utterly obliterated in a full frontal assault, and as we regain our strength, we think about our surroundings and are forced to ponder an alternate strategy. With Turel's minions sapping our life force, we attempt to use a force wave to knock him off the platform and into the caustic waters below. However, he survives the assault, and no matter how much we try, a physical barrage does little, forcing us to deplete the last of our eldritch energy in a last-ditch effort at conquering this unique foe.
This relic has infused you with the power to compress and manipulate space. As your symbiotic weapon, the Soul Reaver is also thus enhanced. You may focus and project an orb of kinetic energy to strike objects that are otherwise beyond your reach.
Now, with our new power, we deftly unleash a telekinetic force projectile at the wall, unlocking the tomb door. Exiting, we're then promptly set upon by a Dumahim guardian. As we scale the wall towards the exit, we realize our new ability can perhaps take care of the heavy lifting for us. Literally. Back at the corrupted pillars, a grateful Ariel guides.
North of the Sarapan tomb, a desecrated abbey languishes, half drowned.
With the Sarapan tomb's secrets revealed and its guard defeated, the Elder God, when sought out, tells us of our next target.
North of the Sarapan tomb, your brother Rahab has secluded himself and his progeny in the ruins of a half-drowned abbey.
Realizing we had not fully plumbed the Sarapan tomb's depths, we return, and with our telekinetic blast, take aim at the target on the wall. Inside the hidden pocket of the crypt leads to a tunnel guarded by a lone Dumahim. Our only path forward through the acidic waters below. Post-plumbing the remnants of the crypt, we emerge into the material realm. Following a cavern to the left, we find ourselves at a large underground lake, complete with anglerfish-shaped boat that, upon us landing aboard, we find its captain has long abandoned ship. Stuck atop the bow, we turn to see a menacing creature from the deep carved on the wall, a promise of things to come, and enter the spectral realm to see the landmass become more forgiving for our scramble ever higher. In the physical plane, we then discover Rahab's personal warp gate. Exiting via the door opposite, we follow the serpentine hall to its end, finding an all-seeing eye blocking our path, and instinctually know our telekinetic capabilities to be the key to our freedom. As the large stone door groans open, we discover.
Once a sanctuary against the vampire menace, this abbey has been drowned by the deluge spilling from this wounded land. Your brother Rahab and his brood, devastated even by the feeble rays of Nosgoth's sun, overcame their vulnerability to water and retreated from the surface. Now they haunt these ruins and glide in the darkness of its stagnant depths.
Looking around our brother's drowned abbey, we see he has wasted no time making his presence known as his sigil proudly brands the flooded buildings. Also of note is the building ahead, with pictures of the Rahabim, and still featuring stained glass, no doubt from its previous occupants. Gliding down to our right, we begin the precarious plunge above the watery depths to skirt said buildings, like a drowning rat looking for higher ground. Ahead, we see peeking out above the remnants of a church bell. Following the pillars, we then leap on the last platform to be sprayed by a fledgling Rahabim. Only just defending ourselves with a telekinetic blast in return. Leaping onto the lip of the platform, the restless reptile lies in ambush. As we enter the next room, again the Rahabim begin their assault, and miraculously, our own blast cancels out their foul, watery bubbles. Without our coveted Reaver, we then extract piping from the wall for our protection, heading through steel grating, and later discover a large and cavernous cathedral's remains. Between us and our goal, an entire lake stretches out over treacherous waters and scant stone to land on. Again, we're forced to leap across the broken remains of the perilous columns. At our final jump, we spy a loitering Rahabim fledgling and fling our pipe with uncanny accuracy. However, we miscalculate our last vault across the pillars. Finding ourselves cast down on the cathedral's tiled floor and fighting the ever-pervasive slewer before emerging whence we came. We re-enter the material plane and watch as the columns realign in a more favourable fashion. Attempting the same gauntlet once more, we find our previously felled foe sprawled and attempt to reclaim our weapon, cursing our premature plucking of said pipe as the Rahabim springs to life, wound now undone. Entering a submerged section of the cathedral ahead, we bypass the lingering spirits searching for a way to climb the wall, finding in the southwestern corner a plane-shifting point. And see the wall at our back is scalable. We then take inventory of the room, seeing our only way forward is via the scant wood of the rafters. Looking down, we then spy a sinister Rahabim swimming in wait below. Just making the final jump into the archway, we're ambushed by amphibious adversaries. With no Reaver and serpents closing in on us, we smash out the window at the end of the hall in desperation, forced to throw the foes into the water below. We then begin skirting water spouts from the outside towards the center tower, seen previously with the ornate stained glass. Crossing the chasm to said building, we find to our right the bell tower from before. Ringing its great chain brings said bell to life. Descending the winding stairs, we're forced to become submerged in the water, and our flesh peels off us, leaving us standing in a spectral realm where two great doors are now opened. Heading inside the darkened temple, we perch upon a lower column with the symbol of the sun painted on it, remembering the Elder God's words about the Rahabim's specific aversion to the sunlight, and see ornate carvings, as well as tasteful tiling, runes and pictures of the Rahabim, with his sigil marked on the wall. Whatever this place is, we decide while ascending the pillars, it is clearly a mark of pride for the clan. At the highest pillar, we locate a realm-shifting portal and phase to the material realm, sensing we are not alone, and church is now in session.
Raziel.
Rahab, you have adapted well to your environment, for one so maladjusted.
Do not mock me, Raziel. You of all of us should respect the power bestowed by a limitation overcome. Kain said you would come.
You speak with the murderer?
You would do well to mind your blasphemous tongue.
What more did he tell you?
That you would destroy me.
I will indeed. But tell me, before I tear your soul from its moorings, do you know what we were before Kain spawned us?
Human.
Sarapan, Rahab, the antithesis of all we ever believed.
Does it matter? We were lost. He saved us.
Saved us? From what?
From ourselves.
Curiously, our former brother treads water, almost daring us to make the first move. Swinging the Reaver impotently, we're met with a water blast that dissipates our weapon immediately. Remembering his kin, we then attempt a telekinetic blast, only to be met with mocking laughter. The serpent then ducks down out of sight and springs forth to swipe at us. Completely out of our depth, we think of the mark on the pillars of the sun and smash out the stained glass above to reveal the searing light. Rahab then whips his tail at us once more, and we leap to the pillar adjacent, hoping to be shielded from his physical assault. With the final piece of glass broken, the entire room illuminates, and Rahab screams in a death throe.
Infused with Rahab's soul, you have overcome your former vulnerability to water's touch. Immersion in water will no longer dissolve your physical body, enabling you to swim to areas heretofore beyond your reach.
Now, with the ability to swim, we jump into the once hazardous waters below and glide gracefully out of the sea creature's tomb. Climbing the stairs of the bell tower, the Elder God then guides.
Beyond the maelstrom of the abyss, a subterranean tunnel leads northward to the clan territory of your brother Duma. Endowed with Rahab's soul, you may swim to gain entry where your progress was previously impeded.
Post disposing of the submerged sod Rahab, and bequeathed with his ability to swim unscathed, we exit the drowned abbey and are instructed of the location of our absent brother, Duma.
Centuries past, your brother Duma retreated with his clan into Nosgoth's northern wilderness. Empowered by the gift of Rahab's soul, seek out his mountain stronghold. But tread carefully. These frozen wastes have mysteries yet to disclose.
Likewise, the spectre Ariel cryptically muses.
Beyond the cliffs that witnessed your execution, a silent city sits in frozen tableau. Locked in eternal limbo, they await redemption or release.
Returning to the Lake of the Dead, we see the destroyed bridge leading to the Duma clan's territory, and although we shall learn who and why the bridge was destroyed, and how the Dumahim became scattered and leaderless soon enough, this is the perfect time to explore a previously inaccessible area that links to Duma's story. As instead, to the left, we can head up this shallow waterfall and find, nestled in the mountain, the human citadel, cleverly surrounded by water. The human guards, upon seeing us, will fall to their knees in reverence. This is due to the fact that previously, in the necropolis, it was compulsory for Raziel to encounter a crossbow-wielding vampire hunter. If we had retaliated against him, all vampire hunters in the entire game become irrevocably hostile, and villagers would flee from us in terror. On the other hand, if we were to ignore this hunter and proceed to the next area without harming him, any subsequently encountered villagers and vampire hunters would bow down to this unknown blue wraith as a messiah, assisting us in combat against vampires and allowing us to sip at their souls for health. Overlooking the citadel, we then muse.
The human citadel, its towering walls and deep moats engineered to keep Nosgoth's vampire plague at bay.
Gliding over the gap to the city, we further reflect.
Though the city was well fortified against vampires, its human architects hadn't considered a breach by a creature such as myself.
The human citadel is a large area which houses one health power-up, one eldritch energy power-up, and although the city was accessible prior to gaining Rahab's ability to swim, it's required to attain the water glyph. However, in the original Soul Reaver storyline, it was actually intended that Raziel would swim to an underground city complex, the Undercity and Temple areas populated by vampire worshippers. In the retail version, of course, they're only found in the silenced cathedral. The leader of the worshippers was the priestess, who would have the gift of possession. The battle with her would have waves of enemies that she could summon from a high ledge, and upon her death, granted to Raziel was the possession ability. Now, the reason why I share this now is to show that humans, though they were discarded by Kain as little more than amusement and a test for fledgling vampires, are somewhat a formidable force if trifled with. Back at the broken bridge leading to Duma's domain, we leap towards said bridge, falling short. Only with a swimming skill do we propel ourselves out of the water to the ledge above. Following the snaking tunnel, we then find another body of water. No doubt, a deterrent placed by the developers in case players attempted to enter the domain prematurely. Exiting the water, we're then ambushed by the first of the Dumahim. Following the path outside into the frigid frost, we pause to see Duma's flag flies proudly in front of his fortress. The snow pelting down seems to be intermingled with ash. Though the area seems deserted, we scale a rampart to our right, admiring the horned helms of stone guardians outside the main gates. We then glide gracefully into an outer enclosure, where we open large wooden doors and are shocked to see the state of the ruined city.
This city once teemed with the life of my kind. Could it be that other clans had suffered the same fate as mine? In his madness, could Kain spare none of his brood?
It was not Kain, but Duma's own arrogance that brought the downfall of his clan. These are human weapons, Raziel. Believing themselves invincible, Duma and his offspring failed to see an attack coming from the least likely assailants. Complacent in their arrogance, they were taken by surprise, allowing the human vampire hunters to decimate their ranks with little resistance. The few that escaped have been reduced to scavengers.
In utter disbelief that humans' weapons were responsible for destroying the powerful Dumahim, perhaps the strongest of all the clans, vampires that boasted the greatest armors forged in the fires of their great furnace. We then phase into the spectral realm, and through metal grating into the labyrinthian structure. To our right, finding the lingering presence of incensed vampiric spirits. And sunlight peeking over the ledge above, perhaps accessible in the physical plane. Heading to the inner courtyard, we skirt the outer cloister to shift realms and see inside the courtyard a puzzle block where, upon using telekinetic blasts, we can return to Wraith form, entering the enclosure and allowing us to venture higher, finding a shifting point to return to the sunlit ledge, gliding across the scene of the carnage below. Following the metallic ventilation system, we see we're inside a more industrialized area that has been flooded, causing our path to be barred. Leveraging the lever to our right, we can then drain the excess fluid like an infected pustule. Once clear, we find two near identical puzzles featuring multiple blocks and once drowned Dumahim. The key to this lengthy puzzle is not only assembling the blocks on each side to be able to get out of the grating area, but then pushing 2 blocks from one side to the far wall, creating a tower high enough to reach the previously inaccessible ledge. Tracing the metallic hallway, we soon learn we're inside a ventilation system of sorts that it could have destroyed our physical form entirely, if activated. As we soon see, we've landed in the heart of the once powerful furnace. On the left side of the forge is a valve, on the right, a switch. And when dropping down to the valve, we see a meandering Dumahim fledgling, barely sentient in its pathetic patrol. Turning on the valve activates the gas nodules across the room, and we glide over to the switch on the other side, momentarily relighting the great forge's fires with a boom. The poor Dumahim and the door he was guarding, utterly incinerated in the blast. As we learned long ago, Duma's delinquent drones are extremely averse to fire. Moving blocks in the main courtyard, we're now able to enter via the physical realm and cross into its eastern archway. A large spiked bridge bars our path, and we discern the switch to be higher. This puzzle involves again shifting between realms to move the room's architecture to more suitable heights. And the jumps are quite unforgiving nonetheless. With the drawbridge descended, we enter Duma's domain undaunted by the danger thus far. Finding to our left a giant inscribed monolith and the entrance to Duma's throne room, now barred. This monument, no doubt a symbol of his clan's virility and dominance in times past, now a limp testament to his premature demise. Heading back to our right, we find another beam of light spelling another way to ascend high above, and over the grating, housing his precious scroll on pillar. Using the phase-shifting sequence again to move the stone platforms to more agreeable heights, we mount the lip to his monument. Thinking of Duma and his love of physical prowess, plus our own newfound strength imparted by our wraith-like form, which our brother was responsible for granting us, helping to toss us into the abyss, we then cast our mind to our father, Kain, the catalyst of all these events, and what he would say in our position, uttering, "They victors, suffering to the conquered," as Duma's obelisk comes crashing down on the door guarding his personal chamber. Flying open the giant double doors, we find ourselves in a decadent hall and an unexpected scene, commenting,
My brother Duma, a powerful warrior in life. He would have burned with shame to have me find him here like a stuck pig.
Approaching our bound brother, we see stained glass behind him, ostentatious and well-earned. On each side of the room are towering guardians, meant to instill menace that was obviously also well-earned, finding it unbelievable that the humans could have felled such a great warrior. Looking at Duma, pathetically sitting helpless on his throne in his invincible armor, yet his defeated remains are untouched by the ravages of time. Shifting to the spectral realm, we're then mocked.
Come to save my soul, prodigal brother.
Not to save it, but to take it. Your only salvation is release.
We then rush the giant before he can react with a swath of our Reaver, doing nothing even in his spirit form, as he spins around us with his own soul-sapping counterattack. Forced to turn heel and flee, we run and hear the spectral Duma follow, perhaps only saved due to his tethering to his bound body to the mortal coil like an anchor. Returning to Duma's body, we think back to the Dumahim we'd previously encountered that would lay dormant until their souls were taken, and against our better judgment, pluck the spears from his hide so he may revive long enough for us to take his soul proper.
Unbound at last. I thank you, brother.
Your thanks are premature, Duma. I have not forgotten whose hands bore me into the abyss.
The centuries in limbo have honed my strength. Not even Kain is my equal.
Even the strongest vampire is vulnerable.
We shall test your thesis, Raziel.
My bloodthirst has been superseded by an even darker hunger. I will consume your soul before this day is done.
Attempting to strike Duma, he simply laughs. Then he counters with an earth-shattering pound. Duma then attempts the same corral and soul-snatching move as in the spectral realm, and again we're forced to flee. This time, our brother is untethered and remains hot on our heels. With no way to slow the gargantuan foe, nor any way to seemingly harm him, we think perhaps he is invincible, and has indeed surpassed Kain. It's then we backtrack into the forge, where we'd blasted the doors off their hinges and scorched the poor fledgling. And remember, fire is the one weakness we can count on against the Dumahim that they'd never overcome. Distracting the overconfident behemoth, We see his hubristic nature again to be his downfall, activating first the valve as he skirts the room. Then, as he lies in the blast path, we pull the switch on the other side to incendiary effect as he wails in agony.
Consuming Duma's soul empowers you to wind a constricting band of spectral energy around your enemies. This energy manifests itself in both the spectral and material realms, and in the physical world, it can be employed to manipulate otherwise immovable objects.
Brother disposed of, we exit his forgotten fortress, our sights set on our old master. After our encounter with the now incinerated Duma in his ash city, the last of our brothers to pay for their betrayal, bar Turel, who was cut from the final game, and whose story is, thankfully, yet to conclude. As we depart Dumahim's domain, the Elder God directs.
In the furthermost canyon of Nosgoth's frozen wastes, the hushed silences embrace an ancient enigma. In the bowels of this labyrinth, your master awaits.
Kain. So our time has come to succeed our father atop his throne of lies. Speaking of thrones, we return to the pillar where Kain's previous victim, the ex-guardian of balance Ariel, restlessly roams.
In the bowels of an inverted clockwork, the tormentor awaits. Be wary, Raziel. Those blind with rage are by destiny ensnared.
Seeking out our tormentor deep in the canyons beyond Duma's domain, we see the entrance to this ancient enigma and meditate on Ariel's words. Those blinded by rage are by destiny ensnared. Wondering if she's speaking about Kain or our own dark destiny to come. We then leverage our new constrict ability against a wandering Dumahim. Studying the sundial, we then realize our new ability is the key to opening this locked fortress. Deeper within, we tangle with a Turalim, guarding a door to an inner sanctum. Stopping to study the markings on said door, most are unfamiliar to us, yet we somehow remember the infinite symbol to be. Yet seeing the dragon reminds us of the symbol of infinity, a metaphor for time and its nature. Shifting back to the spectral realm, a crevice in the wall leads to mechanisms we overcome to unlock the secrets ahead. Doing so reveals a chamber with a lit cauldron that discloses much more than we anticipated.
The Oracle's Cave, where Kain's first fateful meeting with Mobius occurred. Mobius played the role of a doddering soothsayer, stirring his pot of visions while dispensing enigmatic predictions to gullible visitors. Underneath the facade was Mobius the Time Streamer, sorcerer of the Circle of Nine, a ruthless manipulator with the power to bend time. Since his murder at Kain's hands centuries ago, these caves have stood vacant, though, like Mobius himself, they are rumored to be only a facade for a much larger, more elaborate complex. I sensed that Kain was here, and at that moment, I would have plumbed the depths of hell to find him.
Seeing neath the cauldron a swirl etched on the floor from foot traffic, we use our own constrictibility in a similar manner to uncover a secret passage. Following the winding tunnel ever downward, we finally come across a great mechanical construct overlooked by a staff-wielding stone effigy of its patron.
This, I deduced, must be the man himself, the time streamer, Mobius. He seemed not at all the impressive figure I had imagined from Kain's boasted exploits. And yet, even this cold image radiated a certain undeniable power.
Turning, we see the source of the ticking, the promised inverted clockwork, which, upon being activated, opens the bowels of its many mechanisms below. Solving the rudimentary puzzles meant to impede us, we make haste, descending past the cryptic symbols of what seem to be calculations of time and/or space, and find ourselves inside a hallway that Mobius obviously covets as his true power, as we see the very fabric of time and space warp before our eyes, almost calling to us ever forward to show us a flurry of visions of our own twisted place in the time stream, or perhaps something else entirely.
My arrival in this miserable age. What trickery is this?
It is no illusion, Raziel, but a glimpse into the currents of time itself.
These apparitions torment me. Has this all been foretold? Impossible! This must be one of Kain's deceptions. My mind reels with conflict. Does Kain await me moments from now? Or in some century yet to come? This cannot be. What madness does this scene portend? Kain must think me credulous to suffer these lies. Is this phantasm a conjuration of my mind, or an echo of future events?
Discombobulated and disturbed by what we've seen, we leave the Hall of Visions behind, descending deeper into a hall of marble windows, perhaps representing the great nothingness of time itself, scarred by beings attempting to subvert their destiny. And all the while we think of Kain and our unending rage, as we come to a final door marked by the infinite loop of the time streamer, knowing our final showdown is about to take place.
At last. I must say I'm disappointed in your progress. I imagined you'd be here sooner. Tell me, did it trouble you to murder your brothers?
Did it trouble you when you ordered me into the abyss?
No. I had faith in you. In your ability to hate. In your self-righteous indignation.
Lies. You cannot have foreseen all of this.
Eternity is relentless, Raziel. When I first stole into this chamber centuries ago, I did not fathom the true power of knowledge. To know the future, Raziel. To see its paths and streams tracing out into the infinite. As a man, I could never have contained such forbidden truths. But each of us is so much more than we once were. Gazing out across the plains of possibility, do you not feel with all your soul how we have become like gods? And as such, are we not indivisible? As long as a single one of us stands, we are legion. And that is why, when I must sacrifice my children to the void, I can do so with a clear heart.
Very poetic, Kain. But in the end, you offer no more than a convenient rationalization for your crimes.
These chambers offer insight for those patient enough to look. In your haste to find me, perhaps you have not gazed deeply enough. Our futures are predestined. Mobius foretold mine a millennium ago. We each play out the parts fate has written for us. We are compelled ineluctably down preordained paths. Free will is an illusion.
I have been to the tomb of Sarapan, Kain. Your dirty secret is exposed. How could you transform a Sarapan priest into a vampire?
How could I not? One must keep his friends close, Raziel, and his enemies even closer. Can you grasp the absurd beauty of the paradox? We are the same. Sarapan and vampire. With our holy wars, our obsession with Nosgoth's domination, who better to serve me than those whose passion transcends all notions of good and evil?
I will not applaud your clever blasphemy. The Sarapan were saviors, defending Nosgoth from the corruption that we represent. My eyes are opened, Kain. I find no nobility in the unlife you rudely forced on my unwilling corpse.
You may have uncovered your past, but you know nothing of it. You think the Sarapan were noble, altruistic? Don't be simple. Their agenda was the same as ours.
You are lost in a maze of moral relativism, Kain. These apparitions and portents. What game are you playing now?
Destiny is a game, is it not? And now, you await my latest move.
Kain once again summons his violent electric judgment that burns our very being to the core. We quickly heal in the center of the room and charge the demented time thief. Striking Kain with Reaver, we're relieved that he's harmed by its spectral form as he hurriedly works Mobius's machine. Whatever he's attempting, we know time is not on our side. As we scale the second level of the room, searching for Kain, and a hit with a deadly blast once more. Without the Reaver, Kain merely mocks our feeble attempt. Only with the Reaver's power proper does he yield to our assault. With a third penultimate hand on the infernal machine whirring to life, we scramble to find Kain atop the third level and find the distance greater than anticipated. Paying for our ignorance in pain, we glide to the floor. We glide to the floor below, attempting to heal, only to be met with more rays of ruination. Attempting a final gambit at bringing Kain down, we hurl a telekinetic blast, but he simply peeks over his perch-top counter above, proving too powerful. We're then set upon by hungry wraiths in the spectral realm. Feeding off them, we find our footing back in the material plane and attack Kain, landing a final almighty slash against the tyrant's abdomen. They victors, indeed.
You nearly had me, Raziel. But this is not where or how it ends. Fate promises more twists before this drama unfolds completely.
Be warned, Raziel. Once you cross this threshold, you are beyond my influence.
Raziel, Redeemer and Destroyer, Pawn and Messiah, welcome, time-span soul. Welcome to your destiny. Where time is but a loop, a loose stitch in the universal cloth, a streamer might seize upon a chance, a fatal slip, and plunge the fate of planets into chaos.
The story of Soul Reaver will be continued on the channel. And before the credits roll, I would like to give a huge thank you to the Patreon supporters whose kind patronage has made this video possible. And also the talented Raina Audrin for her tireless work and dedication in bringing the Soul Reaver HD Remaster to life, and helping me personally getting my game running.
Shit.